Ana Kasparian has been having a very interesting political awakening. And yes, I know she's still a very left leaning person, but she's at least willing to talk to the other side and entertain new ideas. And of course, admit when she was wrong, which is something most leftists simply cannot do. And what we're going to see today is her, of course, discussing this awakening with Tucker Carlson. But before we get these clips, don't forget to like and comment on this video so we get through the algorithms. Here we go.
But clearly you've started thinking things or thinking through things that you hadn't before. And God bless you. That's like the greatest privilege of adulthood. You get to think for yourself. It's happened to me a lot. But how did that start?
Well, I mean, it started with it started with like personal experiences, and it often does, right? Like often your policy preferences will slap you in the face, and then you're like, oh, I don't like that, you know?
Right. No, I get it.
You know, because sometimes there are unintended consequences. I'll give you a specific example. So I was very much supportive of the Defund the Police movement in 2020. And it was because, you know, you see this video of a man like dying on camera with a police officer refusing to like, you know, ease up on him. And it really made me angry. I felt that it was, whatever you think about George Floyd, I don't care, right? Like what was happening in that moment in that video was so disgusting to me and so unjust. And so I was like, no, I totally bought the narrative that it's not actually about like abolishing police. It's about, you know, taking some of that funding and investing in social services or in social workers. So social workers respond to certain calls instead of the police. That actually has ended up being pretty disastrous in California, in Los Angeles in particular, because I've seen it firsthand.
And you're from there.
I'm from there. My best friend since childhood, she's a social worker herself. And I've talked to other social workers about what their experience has been like. And they're like, I actually interviewed one for a piece I wrote for Real Clear Investigations. And she told me, look, it hasn't really worked out the way people have thought it would work out. Oftentimes we'll go to a call and it's supposed to be a nonviolent person or a nonviolent call. Someone's having a mental health episode, but they'll show up and oftentimes it'll be someone who does have a weapon. It's not a gun, but it's maybe a knife and they feel threatened. So they have no choice but to call the police. And so in 2021, the Los Angeles City Council, you know, was inspired by BLM, and they decided to take $150 million away from the LAPD's budget and instead invest it in other services. It actually ended up being even more, we're spending more on police, more on the LAPD than we ever have, like record amounts. And the reason why is because you have to really ask yourself before you make these decisions, okay, do we need this many officers? Let's compare Los Angeles to other huge cities. What's the police officer or sworn officer to citizen ratio? And in LA, it's always been historically lower, much lower than other major cities. So at the peak of the LAPD and the number of sworn officers in the LAPD, we had about 10,000. After the cuts and after all the difficulty in recruiting new sworn officers, because people don't want to be police officers anymore for understandable reasons. It's not a desirable job when you have people constantly, you know, talking about how terrible cops are. So now we have about 8,500. And as a result, the remaining sworn officers are working insane overtime, like crazy. Like we have one police officer in the LAPD. I think his name's Nathan Corey. He made $600,000 one year because of police overtime. So right now, taxpayers in Los Angeles—
600,000?
Yes, yes. So right now, taxpayers in LA are kind of confronted with this situation where they're paying far more for less as it pertains to policing. Since there is a shortage, there's longer wait times if you call 911 and you need help. Some people complain that they'll call, and if it's not, like, let's say someone was the victim of a burglary, obviously you're not in imminent danger. So they'll call the cops and hope that someone will show up, you know, take fingerprints and maybe find who burglarized them. They never do. But they don't show up for hours, and people get really upset and they're like, why is this happening? And what's really interesting is I try to explain why it's happening, and I get called all sorts of names for doing it, but I don't care. The truth is the truth.
Wait, what do you, I mean, okay. First of all, why are you one of the only people willing to admit you were wrong about defund the police? Like, why were you willing to say, again, bless you, it's the beginning of growth, but I've done it myself many times, but why were you willing to admit that?
Because at the core of who I am, I think as a journalist, you know, I didn't enter this line of work to be a mouthpiece for anyone. I really care about the truth. And I feel that if you want to live in a democracy, you have to make sure that people are getting accurate information to make the right decisions for themselves once they're casting a ballot.
That's right.
And so I felt angry because I felt misled by the media.
Yep.
And now, you know, it was partly my fault too, because I was in a bubble and I was only getting one side of every story. And even if I agree with that side, I should at least hear what the opposing argument is. And I wasn't going out of my way to do that before. Now I do. And so I see things as far more complex and nuanced. And it's hard to make an argument that's going to appease any audience at this point, because I think a lot of Americans have been conditioned to be partisan and prioritize partisanship before truth. And I think truth is what will set us free, genuinely.
So I really like what Ana Kasparian had to say at the very beginning of the interview, right? Your policy preferences will slap you in the face. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now in California. They have a rise in crime, a rise in drug use, and of course, a rise in homelessness. And the reason all this is happening is because California's liberal mindset has basically enabled all of this behavior. Okay, you're going to essentially give homeless people squatters' rights in the middle of the street. You're going to give drug users the ability to have fresh needles and a clean place to use those drugs. And of course, you're going to raise the amount that criminals are allowed to steal before being charged. And of course, to make all of that even worse, you're going to defund the police on top of it. And by the way, all of these leftists out there in California, the ones complaining the loudest, will be the first ones to call for police when, of course, they feel that their emotions have been violated, right? When someone's feelings have been hurt, when someone has been targeted with hate speech, okay? They're the first people who are going to call out, please, police, help us, protect us, keep us safe. And of course, what's happening now? You're spending more money, California, than you ever have on less police. Way to really keep track of those dollars. And of course, the social workers and the unarmed peacekeepers that were replacing the police, how has that turned out? Oh, the criminals are just running roughshod over them. And in some cases, a lot of them are getting hurt and murdered by the actual violent criminals. So of course, who saw that coming? Oh, this guy right here and everyone else with a functioning brain. But one thing I do want to point out here is that yes, Ana Kasparian is a left-leaning person, and I have little to no hope that she will ever actually change her stripes. I am glad she is talking about these subjects. I am glad she's appearing on these other shows, because at the very least, her audience will be exposed to these other thoughts and beliefs. However, I have little to no hope that she will ever actually vote red on anything. And also, I do want to mention this. The right does not have ownership of the truth or good ideas. They can come from anywhere. However, the right is more apt to maintain to those things that we have learned throughout centuries of our civilization. But of course, by definition, the leftists, the progressives, they want to change everything because they view the old systems as being unjust, even though we can learn a heck of a lot from thousands of years of human nature and behavior and, of course, history. So at this point in time, it seems like the left is getting exactly what they asked for, and they just don't seem to like it. But only a few of them, like Anna, are going to wake up to the simple truth that, hey, you were wrong. So please change your minds, modify your beliefs, and of course, go out there and act appropriately. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and say hi to your mom for me. Do you like t-shirts? Of course you do. And now you can support the channel by buying an Angry Teacher t-shirt designed by me, Angry Teacher. So if you like America, if you like freedom, if you like liberty, then go ahead and click the link in the description, where all designs, of course, are 100% mother approved. So enjoy yourself and find something you like today.